Now strokes don't move, Club K with cranes.
Don't ever play that again.
Oh, that was fun. Yeah, that was a blast from the past from George Webb's original jingle button that still is obviously hot, so don't touch that dial. Crush that dwarf. But really, no, don't crush the dwarf. Hand me the pliers from Firesign Theater, a great, wonderful comedy group that predicted a lot of what's going on today. And sometimes I wonder how those guys really knew what's going on. But one person that knows what's going on is Professor Hamamoto. And George Webb, if you don't know what's going on, I'm sure the professor does. So, with no further ado, I do want to let Olivia the Osprey have a word here because she's been waiting to say something. So, Olivia? Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. She's happy. Well, George, I think it's your turn.
Well, Dr. Hamamoto, welcome to the show. And you said we were going to open this with a question. You're going to ask a question of John. Fire away.
Yes, John, you've had a long and storied career as an attorney, right? So you've seen your share of lies and deceit and dissemblance, and you have probably observed what's called duper's delight. And that is what this fellow here, Paul Ekman, he's a PhD in psychology. There's a series that was based on his work called Lie to Me. Duper's delight is his observation that psychopaths or miscreants give a little instantaneous smirk when they get over on you, when they lie to you. Now, did you observe this in Dr. Steve Pieczenik when he said that he was never going to be in the Alex Jones show again if Donald Trump was not inaugurated on January 2nd? Are you familiar with duping delight? That's my question, counselor.
No, but what came to mind was Peter Strzok. The way he he knows that he's got you think you're playing 5D chess, but he's playing 7D chess, and he's so far ahead of you that he gives that little smirk whenever he says anything. But that's the extent of it. I'm not a Pieczenik follower, so I couldn't comment on him. Duping delight, Andy's got it up there. What does it mean, Andy? The thrill of lying. Oh, God. Oh, I hate that. Yeah, that's what it is. I think it's like an addiction, okay? It's like you get away with it once and you don't get punished for it, and you think, well, I got away with it that time, and you do it again, and you start getting rewarded for it. It's like, wow, this lying stuff is pretty good. I'm making a lot of money. I don't know, but no, it does make you happy to get away with things. Like a kid would feel a little bit of a thrill, but I don't think that's really the kind of life I want to live.
Well, the reason I ask is that was my initial reaction when I was watching the inauguration. I held my nose and I watched it, and I saw the people prancing around in royal purple and royal blue. And I just saw the whole event would be characterized by that phrase by Dr. Paul Ekman, duping delight.
Okay. Well known for his work on micro expressions, says Addie adds. And while I've got the mic for a second, I want to thank ECAT and Wes McC for just this moment joining the membership here at McDuff Lives. Thanks for joining up, guys.
Well, geez, Duper's delight. I've never heard of that before, but I think Donnie O'Sullivan at CNN probably that I expected his picture to come up. These folks who did this whole thing at the Capitol, they have to be just in seventh heaven right now, like hogs in crap right now, because it was 100 people. It was their 100 people. They knew the script. The FBI knew long before it ever happened. And now they're acting like, oh, we need to do this manhunt to find out all these people and their names. And the hard part for the FBI is actually finding somebody who wasn't in on it, trying to find somebody who wasn't a hired role player. That's the problem. Mm-hmm. And they'd say, we only got 4 role players out of 100. What are we going to do? Well, let's just announce one a day, like we don't know who they are. They knew who they were when they went on the bus from Fayetteville, right? They knew who they were on the bus. Fourth Cops knew who they were, had all their profiles way before they ever got to Washington, D.C., as soon as they hit I-95. So they are experiencing huge duper's delight right now. People, I'm not kidding, people who are, a guy I used to work with, he called the 2 incidences of January 6th, the siege. Anybody who uses the word siege wasn't there. Anybody who uses any kind of language like the attack on the Capitol or the march on the Capitol wasn't there. Wasn't there. And the reason we brought 12 people here and we were strategically positioned everywhere is so that we would have as many eyewitnesses as possible, in addition to all the social media. It really was, the plan was, we thought it would go differently, that there would be a vote in the Senate, but it turned out to be Dealey Plaza. We thought we were just coming down to see the president, but what we had was 12 witnesses. It would be like you had a meeting of 15 or 20 people in a group that followed the president around. And they all knew each other and they're all staying together in one, Olympic Village. And then this happened. And then we stayed together 2 weeks comparing notes. Mm-hmm. So you're seeing kind of the Kennedy assassination happen as a staged event with January 6th. And you're also seeing the Warren Commission, only a real Warren Commission happen sort of in super fast time. Yeah. In the 2 weeks that have followed. And like I say, anybody who calls it a siege is a duper, and they're delighting in the duping. Anyone who in any way says this is Trump people is a duper, and they're delighting.
Yeah, I think there's a corollary there that Dr. Ekman missed, and that's self-dupification. How's that? Some people enjoy being duped. These are people who like being conned. They like being pachenicked. I'm adding an adjective or a verb into the language. Being pachenicked or being QAnoned. So that's the corollary to duper's delight. And the reason I mentioned I have a show at 3 p.m. On Pacific time, and I talked about how the LDS, the Latter-day Saints, was in complicity with the Third Reich, right? And so I was using that as a warning to us, is that we were duped once before. We're in a very vulnerable state right now. Let's not make the mistake by looking for relief or succor or comfort by some of these other institutions, such as the church, because time and time again, historically, we've seen these institutions will serve us up to Pontius Pilate or whoever it is, whoever the czar is at that point in time. So I just want to put out there right now that in our state of sadness and perhaps mournfulness, be careful who we turn to for help and assistance, because it might be worse this time around. You'll be duped. You'll be pachenicked a second time.
You couldn't have put together a worse cabinet, as far as I'm concerned. I'm just appalled. I'm so appalled that I feel like I'm going to see a horrible crash, and I want to close my eyes because I know what's going to happen. These people are ruthless. They have no morals, and they are completely dedicated to their program. I saw that President Biden signed us back into the Paris Accords supposedly today, and that's just getting started. So the idea that I've learned from Harley Schlanger, from yourself, and from others. This is about deindustrialization of the country, and the part of it is the lockdowns, because by locking us down long enough, we reduce our fuel consumption. We don't have to commute. We've got a lot of people that are working from the home. And by reducing the amount of energy that our country uses, they can therefore slip away more of our capacity and turn us back into people who are completely dependent and don't have our own industries to derive cash flow from. That's what I think is happening here. It's part of that World Economic Forum agenda, the Great Reset. In other words, I hate to use the word communism, but what else is it when you're talking about an international form of socialism that is going to be imposed upon us as a totalitarian state, or even a totalitarian superstate run by the UN or run by these Bilderbergs and trilaterals and all of those crazy things that have been, working behind the scenes to get us right to this point. These folks they are part of I call it the empire, the drawing us back away from our republic into becoming dominion, or a part of a empire that we no longer can control through our votes. We can no longer control through our representatives, because frankly, the government's not going to be that important when they get all of their corporations having the power to make all the big decisions. Who cares who the president is if the president is no longer the person that decides, the big issues in our country and responds to emergencies? Mm-hmm. And I think Joe Biden is ready to respond to any emergencies. My God, they've got this thing sewn up.
George?
Yeah, well, I agree with John. And this is a military junta that's running the show, and Biden. I mean, Barack Obama was kind of a front man, a song and dance man, a speech guy, but Biden isn't even that. He's just a porch or basement dweller, and that's all he's going to do. You're never going to see him other than in a mask, kind of waving like a animatron. And this thing's being run by that deep state. I almost looked at it and said, those people. I almost said, God Almighty, this is the Mena Airport, reunion. Dennis McDonough. I mean, gosh, all these people, all the BlackBerry carriers. So, you look at these people and the duping delight. They get $2 trillion day one. Meanwhile, the citizen journalists sell their home, and put all their money into trying to tell the truth. They get crushed. They get 60 Minutes hit pieces. So, but that's who's complaining. I'm glad with my choice. Truth to the end, and then go to the end. I don't know what else to do. I can't give up, and I'm going to just keep trying to do what I do, and keep trying to support and develop great people. That's all you can do.
Now, George, toward that end, I had a what I call office hours on Zoom yesterday with Patron, and it was really good, really incredible session with the attendees. And one of them's going to be seeing you down in Louisiana. His name's Tyrone. He's looking forward to meeting you. He's going to drive 4.5 hours down, because you mentioned you're going to go to have a charrette in Louisiana, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I sent Tyrone some books at the beginning of the year. Tyrone Sargent. Yeah.
Okay. You know him. So
yeah. He's in San Diego, I think, or somewhere around there.
Hey, shout out to Tyrone. He's very cool guy. He's often in my chat too.
Yeah.
We had this session, and there was a talk being floated about that you were possibly going to be doing a regular Monday through Friday show.
Yes, I am.
Oh, is it you're confirming this right now? It's
Yeah, yeah. No, I have no problem confirming. The only problem was the hours. Aaron wanted to do a 3-hour thing, and I said I can do the first 2 hours, call in, but 3 hours is a lot because I'm trying to get these books all rewritten, and got another one coming out tomorrow. But I mean, you know how it is when you're doing research and everything. It's just 3 hours is a lot because you have front end and the back end. It's 4 hours or 4.5, and but yes, I think the 25th, Andy, we're starting that.
I think we bumped it to February 2nd.
Oh, hey, February 2nd. Yeah, we're going to do that call-in show. And yeah,
well,
had so much going on here. We're really focused on McDuff right now. And
right.
But everybody leaves tomorrow, and we'll kind of go back to the
February 1st.
February 1st, yeah.
Okay. Well, Aaron Adler was part of the office hour session yesterday, and he kind of filled in. And he did mention your reservations about doing 3 hours. That's a pretty large swath of time, chunk when you're doing research and writing as you're doing.
Yeah.
So I agreed for 30 days straight on, so that you can announce to the world and Sean Hannity and Fox News that Team W has arrived, that I will volunteer to take that third hour for you.
Oh, great. Yeah.
For those 30 days. I don't beyond who knows if I'm going to last that long. But and also when you need to hit the street again, I'll be glad to sub for you.
Well, yeah, and I think everybody wants to go back to the reporting and go back to the, we got locked out basically of DC. Otherwise, we'd be up there more. I mean, we couldn't even get to the point where we couldn't even see the couple of the Capitol anymore. But 2 hours you can do on the phone, but then you got to go to the bathroom at some point, and so I think 2 hours is a good.
Okay.
Format. Yeah, call-in's not as hard as this kind of show, which is, there's no call-in, so your content flows from one to the next, and it's a little bit more tight.
Now, I did mention to Aaron that I wanted to do a sort of like a midnight show, a call-in show.
Okay. Yeah.
Something like that. There was a guy in the LA, I guess he was in the national market, ABC network. His name was Dr. David Viscott. And he was a psychiatrist by training, but he was very intense. It was an incredible show. I mean, I'm a fan of call-in radio shows as well as variety shows. So I was thinking about something along those lines, because people are going to need and want to talk over the next 4 to 8 years.
Yeah, it's been very therapeutic over at the Olympic Village. We have 12, 14 people, and everybody talking and decompressing, especially those couple days after the 6th, because we saw the coverage, and it was literally like it must have felt in the Vietnam era where you said, we're winning the war, we're making democracy safe in Vietnam, and then you saw them dragging bodies out of the Saigon embassy, that kind of cognitive dissonance that America went through. That's where we were on January 6th. This is I'm chipping away every day at this. And there are people like YouTubers who weren't there, who had the same audience that we do, that are calling it a siege. They're completely mistaken because they're just looking at the pre-planned cuts of CNN.
Right.
Anybody that watches the mainstream media at all is going to call it a siege. Our correspondent Karina sent us a translation of a German article from the press over there, in which the question was: is American press propaganda? And they compared it to the Russian press, and they has a chart that they created, and they had all of the media like MSNBC, and CNN and all that stuff down the left-hand side, and then it had a check mark for if you used the word rioters, if you used the word insurgents or protesters or Trump supporters. And the matrix was quite clear that every single one of them, from Business Insider to MSNBC, was using the words rioters, storming the Capitol, all of this stuff that really only applied to the few, maybe a few dozen people that were there for the very purpose of trying to get everyone else to storm the Capitol. But the fact is, they did not storm the Capitol. The only people that did were these people that had a plan to do it in the first place, for the cameras, for the mainstream media, for the purpose of destroying the reputation of 2 million people that came to Washington simply because the president asked them to come.
And if you notice in this segment here, you just have two guys, everyone else watching them, not cheering them on. And then you have people coming up and going, hey guys, stop, right? Mm-hmm. You have the Trump crowd stopping. Now, where is this video? Where's John OLoughlin tonight when the Patriots are trying to stop these guys, these Antifa guys? Look at that, putting his hand up in the air. Stop. What are you doing? And now he's going to get, now the other role players are going to come in and attack him and get him out of the way so that these two guys can go at the window again. This was a docile crowd. Now, again, if you had it pre-shot to just the window and you're just seeing those two guys go at that window, and then you go around to 8 different shots and you go real tight like that, it looks like it was pandemonium. The word mob was used. This is not a mob. We were there. And I have people who weren't there. Okay, remember, we weren't only there that day. We were there 3 days before, and we were there 3 or 4 times afterward. And we're there the whole day. It was not a mob. It was a friendly, peaceful a group that, now I'm not saying psychops. They didn't try psychops on the mob, but it made West, it was a very old Woodstock. It would be like if Woodstock was sponsored by, Depends. I mean, it was, I don't mean to say it that way, but I mean,
no, yeah,
it was almost like outside of these pre-planned shots. It was like a kind of like a festival, like a music festival.
And thanks, Norman Smith. Norman, you're very kind with your super chats, and you're such a cool guy. Norman was, of course, here at the Charrette for a while. He went down to downtown and observed himself. He's just another witness among thousands and thousands that no, the crowd was not rioting. The crowd was, as you say, just milling around like a bunch of people at Woodstock, only wearing MAGA hats and carrying, American and patriotic gear.
Yeah, the weather was better than Woodstock. I agree with you. There wasn't mud at Woodstock. Yeah.
Well, that was that Operation Popeye when they decided to see reacted.
Now, what I don't understand is that despite all the material that you put out with your team, George, already like that, or they can watch this video, the people who are calling it a riot and mischaracterizing it and going with the dominant media, that really boggles my mind. And I can't really come up with another explanation for their refusal to see with their own lying eyes what's actually taking place. So I can only go back to my earlier point that these are people that have a deep psychology of self-duper's delight. They want to believe a certain reality took place, and there's very little you're going to be able to produce for them to convince them otherwise. And I don't know how to overcome that.
Well, like, for instance, this Buffalo Head guy is already out of jail. When does that happen if you go into Nancy Pelosi's office and steal her server that she's been running dark weapons on? When does that happen?
Right.
And these other two guys, Philly Antifa, they're Philly Antifa. The other guy we talked about from Utah, but he's really at a military training camp in Colorado Springs as a speed skater. And his brother, he's Antifa, this John OLoughlin, and his brother is Proud Boys. You don't even have to leave the kitchen to cover 2 of the groups that were staged at this thing. Mm-hmm. We knew this was coming. Aaron gave us the book, Blueprint for Revolution, and he just showed it. We positioned ourselves all around the Capitol. It was sort of like we knew Kennedy was going to come and get going to get shot somewhere around here, and we were ready. And I just happened to be in the perfect spot when they walked right by me, and I was right in the crowd with them. And they were not MAGA. The MAGA people were still up the hill, coming down the hill from the Trump speech. And Catherine Herridge and John Solomon also came out 4 or 5 days later and confirmed what I said. Jack Posobiec came out about a week later, confirmed what I said, because I had the eyewitnesses. We recorded the eyewitnesses and we published them. So what's going to happen is this is going to change over time. This whole idea of, there was a new article out today saying they may kill the impeachment because the timeline didn't work. We destroyed this false narrative that Trump somehow encouraged these people and whipped them up and then into a frenzy and then sent them down to the Capitol. Doesn't work. And the Washington Post today had that article saying that was a misnomer, that Trump didn't whip them up. The timing didn't work.
Don't you see, George, that is the fruits of the deal that was cut. You know, that's why Lady Gaga had the big dove with the olive branch on her, you know, on her breast there, so everybody would see that, hey, we made a deal. So, you know, once the deal's made, you know, a few people are going to get to holler about how, you know, Trump's a criminal and impeach him. They're not going to impeach him.
No, I think they're going to drop it tomorrow. And but there was
because they made a deal.
Yeah, I made a deal. But it, you know, having Garth Brooks come out and mouth the you know, Amazing Grace and all the attempts at trying to you know, play to the fact that the election wasn't stolen is not going to work. I mean, that's not going to change the Dominion machines. It's not going to work. And so, you know. And then now the new narrative is, well, if you say anything about that, you're whining. No, if you're a flying monkey for Donnie O'Sullivan at CNN, you would call it whining. But if you're a journalist and you actually interview people who are eyewitnesses, that's called journalism. It's not being in your basement watching CNN videos over and over, like Howard Hughes watching Wings reruns, and convincing yourself something happened when you weren't there. That's what we have, is all these millions of people who are just watching the reruns over and over and convincing themselves these pre-planned set shots and convincing this was a mob. It wasn't a mob.
Yeah, I thought it was very significant that the Post came out with that. And didn't Krugman say something similar?
I didn't see
I don't remember, but some of the big, you know, liberal spokesmen are saying, you know, there wasn't really a riot, you know. And yeah, I think, and George, you know, I think you deserve a lot of credit for putting together the witness statements and being there, and the reporting you did on the orange hat people. I think is absolutely devastating, because if it ever came to a trial, you've got the video, your observations. They're not going to try this case. They're not going to put this in front of the public in a public trial way. Not to say they're not going to keep exploiting it as they will, but Professor, what do you sense on the left? I see they're still causing, you know, damage up in Portland and Seattle, and this mid-press news, which I follow on Twitter, is suggesting that Biden's going to smash Antifa now because they don't need them anymore. They're no longer useful since they did their job. Now they've got rid of Trump, and now Biden is going to impose law and order. What do you think is going to happen on the left? Is the left going to keep beating on the police stations and the local legislatures, or are they going to stand down, or are they going to get beat down?
Well, in case people missed George's earlier comments and observations and the skepticism he expressed about mint press, and I don't know if Whitney Webb is still writing for her or not. But despite that, these individuals are beyond any sort of ideological spectrum, left or right. They are hired mercenaries that are going to be there to keep a certain level of civil disruption, destruction, in order to hold the American people hostage until we submit to the great lie that's going to be foisted upon it. Well, it already has been, the great lies that we've been struggling against. They're only going to compound, and they're going to intensify. So the mint press is, again, they're trying to do a Pechennik on us, saying, yes, it's going to, now that Trump is gone, law and order will be restored by the man on the white horse, Joe Biden, or whoever it might be.
Mhm.
So again, I want to be cautious. Every time you hear the story that gives you a little sense of hope, just think Pechennik.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to study this guy. I really don't know his work.
He was the deputy secretary of state under Henry Kissinger, and he was the guy primarily responsible for Gladio.
Does he kind of look like Anthony Hopkins?
Yeah.
And he does these videos
Yeah.
like looking at you with his big blue eyes? Oh, I can't watch that guy.
Yeah. But he looks like he's growling
Nonsense.
or whatever. But I think the Q rhetoric, Dr. Hamamoto, like I always say, baby in bathwater. In the Q stuff, there is stuff that does come from the classified materials that they've decided to release in order to manipulate the population. That's why I always read the Q stuff and figure out which half to keep. But you have to always remember half is throwaway. And when I started hearing about these planes circling Washington and how there wasn't going to be an inauguration and Trump's going to, come in with the 10th mountain, and these people are getting unbelievable numbers of views. This Monkey Works is, had some 500,000 view shows. Jeff Prather, love him to death like a brother. I love him. But he kind of got into this where, Trump's not going to let it happen. And I said, Jeff, you worked at Fourth Psych Ops. You know better. You know that this is going to this false hope here, right? And I don't think he felt like, there's a lot of people that really felt like there was something afoot. They really felt like this 13,848 was going to, be implemented. So I don't hold that against them, and I take them at their word that they meant the right thing. You showed shots of Portland here, and I think you might be right, John, on this. The first thing I said was there was riots 2 days after the January 6th in Portland, and I said they flew the Antifa guys out there because 2 days before that they were at Josh Hawley's house, the senator from Missouri, because he was going to vote for the election fraud examination. Same orange hats. And I think there's going to be some theater now to show Biden's tough on Antifa, to set distance between him and Antifa. Use it as a tool, bust all the windows for 9 months, tell everybody now you have to forget about that. And now you're the terrorist, you're the domestic terrorist. And now we'll show Biden's tough. I went to Florida and did the story about Mint Press as a reporter. I had no dog in the fight on Mint Press. I had a guy named Dan Hopsicker who had done 911 who said the guy who ran Mint Press was taking all this Iraq reconstruction money. He created 3 companies, and all of a sudden he landed on his feet with all these multi-million-dollar companies, and he was getting it all from the Iraq Reconstruction Fund. Okay, that's a valid story. And he's telling me that, hey, they're in the same building as Adnan Khashoggi. It's right over there. You want to go over there? I had no idea Whitney Webb would be so much a part of it. I like Whitney Webb. I think she's a great reporter. I just don't think she knows where all the money came from. Muha Wesh is the guy. He's the one who said he had a Middle East trading company. He's the one who said he had all of his Shiite friends take all the positions after they swept out all the Sunnis in Iraq. And they look at this reconstruction money as sort of a dividend. It's sort of like spoils of war. And we'll build hotels, we'll build cable companies, we'll build infrastructure, we'll rebuild the electrical grid, but it'll be our electrical grid. It'll be our hotels, our stuff. And then we'll do another one. And there is this kind of bloodlust that these folks have developed. And these are people on the right. These are the Wolfowitzes of the world.
These are the disciples of Joseph Corbell, Madeleine Albright.
Yeah.
Going back even before that. But in addition to this, and this is why I brought in the Melania Knobs and Melania Trump connection there, is that One of the big lessons that I've gotten from George and John's conversation over the past few years is that a lot of the wars, the wars of what Donald Rumsfeld called old Europe, the wars of these empires, they migrated to the United States and they're being fought out on U.S. soil. And some of these same families are going at it. And when the elephants fight, the ants get squashed. We're the ants. So
and they let us know that we are just a little bitty ants, and the amount of money that they have to play with is so unbelievable. That that they have $1 billion here, $1 billion there, $2.5 billion there, and then they make a deal. Now they've got $2.5, or $3 trillion, that the taxpayers are funding, just giving to a very small number of people on the hope that somehow it's going to do good for the American people. But it's a joke. It's ridiculous. The Congress that gave away that money before they even had tested a vaccine, but they're buying a vaccine without even knowing that there's going to be a vaccine, and they paid them anyway, and they gave them complete blanket waiver of any type of liability for anything that happens as a result. This is so obvious, but man, I don't know what it's going to take to wake the people up to this scam, this disgusting scam that has worked over and over again. And we were talking about the flu earlier today, and George mentioned the chickens, and this is one of the things that I learned from William Engdahl's book, Seeds of Destruction, is that H1N1 flu was not something that suddenly appeared, in every poultry farm in Asia. But what happened was the fear of it was pumped up so big that they were able to force the governments to kill all the local chickens to make sure that they, didn't have the H1N1 flu. And then the chickens that come in are the chickens that have been bred by the big pharma companies and the big, Monsanto companies, whichever ones they were, so that they have that, kind of a monocrop of chickens that's maybe still grown in China, but the guys that grow them don't own them anymore. And it's just like the crops. This is insane that, that we're getting our chicken from China. We're getting, pork from China. Yeah. My God, it's got to stop. It's just too crazy. And the graft, I don't know, Professor. This administration is going to drive this country into the ground with these types of policies.
Well, we're looking at Antifa in Portland, but I think it's misdirection. Going back months now, I've been interested in agriculture, the Department of Agriculture, the agricultural colleges, the Morrill land grant that empowered the universities to fuse with the military. And if I may be so bold as to make not a prediction, but to kind of look ahead, we'll anticipate an uptick in zoonotic diseases and attacking large animals and our food supply, from chickens to pork and beef, in order to push us further into desperation, which is in accord with, John, your observation about the immiseration of the American people in general to exert political control. So I see attack in the agricultural infrastructure as being probably the next move.
It's been under attack for some time, but bringing it out in the open and making people use it as a weapon of terror, as well as a weapon of altering our genes and everything else.
Well, one of the things I notice here is what I try to offer people is focus on the metadata, not the narrative. Keep building out who the network is. Keep focusing on the network, sort of the way you would undo the Kennedy assassination. Learn the players, learn the key dates, and so forth, right? And it's hard. It's kind of like learning a game or learning it's hard. It's a lot easier to just sit back and go, you know what? Trump's going to get him. oh, I see all the planes in the air. Monkey Work said that the C-130s are circling and the H-60s are circling, and oh, I bet that 10th Mountain's going to use the super sights. And
yeah, we had an A-10 circling out here, right off of the Potomac River. I think it was Bill Taylor that showed us the radar, and it was an A-10, which is that attack airship that of just legendary ground support aircraft that could fire a whole lot of machine gun bullets real fast.
Yeah.
Very, very quickly, George, you mentioned earlier this morning about this one bureau that has a box 123.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in Congress, I believe that
Congress,
the Dark Weapons Program.
I think I know the reference there. That's to the C-123. That was the U.S. Air Force aircraft that dropped Agent Orange.
Yeah.
So that might be a sick joke.
Yeah. I mean, it could be. I believe that, just to get back to, John's dad's story and so forth, and just the whole story of the Kennedy thing. If you have a dark weapons program, and all of a sudden Nixon says, hey, move it offshore, the closest place to take it to is Canada, and move it to NATO. And then at some point, the NATO countries want to sign the agreement for biological weapons, BWC, and they move it to Ukraine. So I've done a lot of work with showing how that would happen. There's a network, and you have to learn the blackberries, and you have to learn Kolomoisky, and the names are hard. But it is going to be the answer to the test, because Cofer Black runs Burisma, and this is the administration that's now in power. So we have to get to the point where it's okay to do puzzles again. You don't have to do video games all the time. But the other, watching all the planes circling and having Monkey Work say, hey, everybody's about ready to, they're about ready to land. And literally one day ago, I mean, not 6 months ago, one day ago. It's like watching a video game and, hey, Trump's going to win. It's hopeful.
George, you hit it. It's video games. We're so, as a people, we're locked into the whole gamification of reality. Everything's a simulation. Everything's a live action role play. And we're watching spectator sports now for generations. So it's very easy to transfer that into political immobilization, where we're sitting back looking for the Hail Mary pass, so to speak, right? Or the big hit on a single shooter video game. I think a lot of it has, because I'm into toys and games, gamification, Legos, and I see the cultural transformation from doing puzzles, jigsaw puzzles on the parlor table, from these people with their joysticks thinking that they're solving real world problems. And we have seen the chickens come home to roost just very recently, within the past few days.
Indeed.
It's part of this cultural, this transformation. And I think the people who came up with these video games, Atari, which by the way in Japanese means attack, I think they knew. Nolan Bushnell was way ahead of it. He probably was read into some sort of program saying, yeah, we're going to deluge a whole couple new generations into becoming game heads and phone heads. Not to disparage the footage, George, that you gathered on the cell phone, because these weapons are double-edged, right? You could use them for good, and you can also use them for stupefaction. So I think on a perceptual level, going past even Paul Ekman talking about micro-expressions, let's talk about micro-cultural sabotage that we've been talking about for the past several months, even as down to something as seemingly silly as super soakers, right? Because we're also being poisoned through aerosols to lower our immune system, so these infectious diseases can take root in us. And that was workshopped in Vietnam. It wasn't all Agent Orange. As devastating it was, they were also trying to workshop how they can use this aerosol process to degrade human life. And we know them colloquially as chemtrails, but it's geoengineering. In addition to cutting off certain spectra of light, sunlight, right? But through this cloaking mechanism here, UV. We're being assaulted. You know, the full spectrum is literally a spectrum, spectrum of frequencies, spectrum of light, not just metaphorically, but this is all part of the attack that goes way beyond Joe Biden or the contemporary occupant of the White House. It might even go beyond Cofer Black. And it might even go to as deep as some other force, some other dark force, the dark prince out there. I don't know.
Well, John, you have the sky covered, and you're the expert. You've read the book, so you.
Well, what I wanted to do was to offer you guys something that I think is really a hopeful sign. I get signs from my dad sometimes, and this is one. I thought I'd read all of his poetry, and he wrote a lot of poetry when he was young. This one surfaced just yesterday, and I hadn't read it before, and I think it's something we can listen to and maybe contemplate a more positive way to look at the future through my dad's eyes. This poem is called Four-Handed. He found a cave in a seldom land, stored it strong, and then began, with a well-made plan, and a spool of thread, a Wedgwood vase, and a shrunken head, a brace and bit, and a ping-pong ball, a burlap bag and a linen shawl, French perfume, and some 3-in-1. An expensive piano accordion, an English bike, and an abacus, 6-place logs, and a calculus. The bartender's guide and nursery rhymes. Friday's issue of the New York Times. Some cellophane, and a good shoe last. The wisdom of an iconoclast. He passed the archive family, he packed the archive family, then searched the land for a patient friend. I beg your pardon, may I say that again? I misread it. He packed the archive fondly, then searched the land for a patient friend to share the long watch through the night, to share the hoard and wait for the light.
My God.
And that's my dad's poem. And reading it yesterday, and I thought, well, we've just spent 2 weeks going through the archives of my dad's life. And it's been hidden, and now we're going to bring it into the light. And I have to say, I have to thank my faithful friend right here for making the opportunity and for going for it. And
It was all the Patreon people that support me that made it possible to have all these people here, John.
But this is a miracle, and I am so humbly grateful to you, Professor, and for all your wisdom and your contributions to our show. And now you've got your great show going, and I'm very, very proud of everybody that's been part of this. That poem, I don't have a date on it. I can't really say when, but to share the hoard and wait for the light.
Well, I think these are sometimes Rorschach tests because you can just give your immediate reaction without thinking, just letting it flow over you. And I immediately think of the Nazi horde coming into our country. Mm-hmm. And I immediately think of finding a cave, a place to put the files. And then I think of finding a friend that I can share it with, like Colby. And I think I need to get over that church again and look around for those, paperclip files. But, that's a Rorschach test. You see it, what you're familiar with in the poem.
Here's my Rorschach. I thought the poem is about the friendship between John OLoughlin and George Webb. That poem is about you two, I believe.
Oh, man. I'll
Yeah.
have. Well, in a way, I see a lot of similarities there too, because you need to find an ally in this thing, and lots of allies actually, because it is dark without. That's why we said we don't have real candles, but we said we were going to do
We
candles.
knew you'd show up with a candle, Professor, so we thought we'd bring 3 candles tonight.
There you go, right there. The ladies love candlelight.
All right.
All right. Well, we won't say the name, but she's a beautiful woman.
Well, I see that we did get some super chats tonight. I can't quite see everyone's name to say thank you individually, but thank you all very much. And thanks everyone for participating in the chat. Be sure and leave some comments after the show if you'd like to add any of your favorite links or anything you'd like to point out to us to help us understand your perspective. I always enjoy it when someone gives me a link that I had never considered before. It does happen pretty often, and that's all part of it too.
Thank you, John. It's been a pleasure, and thanks to all the folks that came down to help get John back on his feet with the channel.
Oh yeah, we're doing great. And George Webb, Professor Hamamoto, and Andy DeBala, one of the unsung, but much appreciated heroes behind the scenes tonight, working our lights, our sound, our action, our production. So thanks, Andy, and thanks, everybody. Have a great evening, and we'll be back soon.
Great. Thank you, gentlemen. Bye, everybody.
Thank you, Doctor.
Bye-bye.